Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years.
So get ready! I mean, get ready! Are you ready for some football?
You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. A weekly podcast about sports since 2011. With a focus on football. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, here with episode 409. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
A little bit different show for us tonight, Justin.
It is. But, we like to mix it up, especially kind of in these episodes kind of here in January. I mean, I know you don't want to talk about Dolphins right now.
No, I do not.
So we'll do that.
Yeah, well, we're in the thick of the end of pro football and college football playoff. There's a lot going on, but we're going to take a little bit of a tangent this evening and talk about something that's super interesting to us as well, which is history in general, but more specifically local history. And joining us here this evening is the creator and do-it-all for everything on Berks Nostalgia, berksnostalgia.com, Alexa Freyman. Alexa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Was it weird for us to reach out to you saying, hey, we're normally a sports podcast, but we'd like to talk to you about what you do?
No, I've been, on a few podcasts at this point, so I'm used to it. It's great. I love chatting about history, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of that with you. You mentioned your appearances. I know I've listened to you on a variety of other podcasts. I know recently you were on with Berks Weekly with Jason.
Yep.
A nice interview on there as well. Also, I Hate Social Media podcast, which was an interesting one to find. But that was a great interview as well. And I think one of my favorite, just because it was a longer form, was the Organic Spaceship one.
Yep.
Also a local podcast. That was about a year and a half ago.
That was my first, yeah.
And I know a lot of things have changed for you since you did that podcast.
Absolutely,
which we're going to dive into as we move through the topics tonight. But we do appreciate you joining us here on this episode.
Of course.
So, well, let's dive right in and get a little bit of an introduction, a biography for you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Berks Nostalgia?
About myself, I guess. How far back do you want me to start?
However far back you want to go.
Well, Berks County, born, raised, Spring Township, actually. I grew up just a couple of blocks from where we're sitting and off of Old Fritztown Road, and graduated from Wilson in 2009. So, I'm a local kid as well, which I guess was part of the reason you contacted me, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I went to what was called Philadelphia University at the time after I graduated in 2009. It was originally Science and Textile. Some people know it by that. Was then Philly U, and then now it is since merged with Jefferson.
Okay.
So it's Jefferson U. Got my bachelor's and lived in Philly for a few years, and then eventually decided to come back and start my family. So that's the abridged
What's your
version.
degree in? What did you focus on?
Yeah, my degree's in graphic design communications, and I had
that
a
makes a
minor
lot
in
of
marketing.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been fairly creative, so.
Yeah, well, and that's your day job, right? That's the thing you do.
Yep, at this point, I'm in marketing. I build a lot of websites using WordPress, it's content management system, so that's what I do.
And what led you to create berksnostalgia.com and the multimedia project you have going on now for the better part of almost closing in on 8 years, I guess.
8 years, yeah. It was March of 2017. I had recently moved back. I moved back in 2016. local history was something I was always interested in. I remember as a kid kind of pouring through my mom's it was around Christmas, the passing scenes by George and Gloria Miser would come out. And she would always get it as like a Christmas gift from somebody in our family. And I would sit there and look through it, and I would just be like fascinated by, this pictorial, version of our history. And that's really kind of where my interest started. Obviously, when you're young, you don't really kind of grasp the importance of kind of knowing your local history. But then when I came back, I spent a lot of time pouring through Google News archives, which I know you are also familiar with.
100%.
Yes.
And just loved, that's like, for me, that's fun. Like, I like to just sit there and read old newspapers and see what was going on at the time.
Absolutely.
So I would find cool things and clip them, and I kind of wanted an avenue to share them with the general public. So that's when I created my website to kind of blog about it, and then the social media, to also post and get it into the public. So that's how it started. At the time, I was also really into the dying mall culture. Like, Berkshire was still doing okay
Sure.
at that time, but Fairgrounds was like on its way out.
It's the end, yeah.
It was the end. So I actually went and the videos are still up on my YouTube channel, and documented them, just walking around. And it's super amateur. Like, this is my first, rodeo. But I leave them up because it's a good reminder of where I've been.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I really like, in general, when a lot of people, and some people like this, I've been along for the ride, not always from the start though. Excuse me. But seeing the videos progress and seeing what the early stuff looked like is always kind of interesting.
It is. And yeah, my production value has definitely, increased since 8 years ago, but I just felt like it was important that the malls be documented, because that was an important place for us, like our generation.
Oh, yeah.
Before we could drive, but when
yeah.
we still wanted some sort of independence, parents dropped us off at the mall, and we met all our friends there and walked around for a few hours. And so that, to me, was something that bridged the gap between my parents' generation and me, because my mom, her first job was at Pomeroy's. What was Pomeroy's at the
Yeah.
mall? It was Bonton, now it's gone.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's something that I don't feel like I'll be able to share with my own children. So I could see it all ending in a sense, and just wanted to document it as it was happening. So those two things really were the start.
Yeah, you started Berks Nostalgia probably around the same time that I was we do the Bulldog Hour podcast for Wilson Football. We just finished our 10th year doing that, but a few years into it, I was like, we need a web presence, we need something to do, and I was like, I need to fill it with something.
Yeah.
And I started going back through Google News Archive and newspapers.com, and the Red and Eagle used to have a fantastic archive from fall of '89 through present until
Till they went bankrupt and it went away. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the new owners do not seem to care about the past old issues. But I was like, I'm gonna try to go back and document every single game in Wilson history to have for people to check out, especially those people that played in the 40s, 50s, 60s that may not have any information other than possibly a yearbook on their games,
right.
their season. And that was a lot of fun to do. And so when I saw someone doing something similar for all of Berks County and so many things around the area, I was like, this is something I'm going to like. And this, I think I found you late 17, maybe early 18. So within the first year or so.
You were in there pretty much since the get-go.
Trying to remember what the first post was, but I think it was around the holidays.
Okay.
So it was, it's been a long time coming, and it's been awesome to see your growth over the years.
Thanks,
the way that you've grown, not just the website, but your social media presence. You're all over the place. I know I found you on Facebook, and I think the millennial generation, that's still a place that we go to. Not so much the ones behind us, maybe, but
Oh, yeah. You know what? I actually did look at the Bulldog Hour website, and I did want to commend you on all of the archive. I looked through, and beyond that, the video you have for the 1945 season, that is incredible footage.
So actually, right around within the first year of me doing the website aspect, I talked with the coaches, and I was like, look, I see your VHS room. You have almost everything in there from every season.
Yeah.
Do you have a backup of it? They're like, no, that's just the hard copies. And I was like, can I digitize it? So I digitized every single season.
Yeah.
So I was like, all I ask is you let me share them, or I'll sell them for a fundraiser for you. And that's why I sell DVDs and thumb drives as a fundraiser. But
was like the early ones, including that first season. I was like, we got to put those on YouTube. There's
my
got to be
gosh.
available for people.
It
And
was so neat.
the late Jim Lippincott, who is mentioned all the time for that 1945 season as the first touchdown pass in Wilson history, he did not know the video existed. And he
What?
passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it was,
He actually
it's
passed away
probably
on his
closer-
birthday.
Probably closer to 4 now. I
Yeah,
feel like.
on Halloween,
wow.
about 3 or 4 years ago. But he had come in the sandwich shop, and I asked him about it. He had no idea what I was talking about, and he tracked it down, and he's like, "I've never seen that video."
Oh, but he got to see
but
it.
he did get to see
Oh,
it.
that's good.
It's awesome, and it's color too, which
Yeah.
just blows my mind.
That's what
Right,
I did.
right.
I was like, did you colorize that?
No,
like
I didn't do anything
45
to it.
footage was in color.
It wasn't like, and you see the old bus and the
Well,
old school.
they're
and-
running out the
Right.
Yeah,
door,
they're
like, and it's like Americana, like the cheerleaders
very
are
much.
chasing the
Yes.
bus, and then it shows George Field and these
With the train in
incredible
the background.
trains in the
Yes.
yard
Yeah.
behind it, and I'm like,
It's-
oh my god,
It
like
is excellent. I couldn't
it's-
believe it.
I was like just blown away.
Yeah, this was like, I want to say this was early 2018 when I did it for the first time, and I
Yeah.
went in and grabbed. I was like, I'll start at the beginning. What's the earliest you have? And I was like, you have 1945. You
Literally
have
the
the
beginning,
first
yeah.
game, and that's the only one they have from 45. And I'm not even sure there's any from 46. But somehow
Someone
they have the first game.
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's the one you want. Like
Yeah.
that is if you're
Right.
gonna have
you
old
think about
footage,
it, like it's kind of crazy because there could have been any,
Mm-hmm.
right? And over the years, someone probably got rid of it, or they might just not have video for a lot of those.
Right.
I'd be willing to bet that was the big part.
well,
of it.
and
But
they all
To
originally
have
were
that
on,
first one and to still have it is crazy.
they were all originally on 8mm films
Right.
or
Right,
whatever
right.
it was, and those were converted from film to VHS by Bill Hawes, and then
digitized them,
and then
yeah.
I digitized them from the VHSs and the mini DVs that they had, and now the
I was
Huddle
just
film.
telling this story the other day
Yeah.
about what work you did for that stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was down again, it's a 1-for-1, so like I'd have to come down and push play and record and then wait, an hour or so. Come
Right.
down, switch the tapes, put in the
Oh my
next one,
gosh.
and then save all the metadata. But like all the old stuff is done. From the 40s through mid 2000s are completely done. I have all that stuff, and I have a huge hard drive that it's backed up on for the team to have. So like we'll always have those because they're
Yeah.
saved in my cloud. I'm like, we're never losing those.
It's
Those-
priceless.
yeah, it's something you'll never get back. And knowing people like Mr. Lippincott, who didn't know his first game existed on film, that he could watch it again and that he got to do it, that made me feel good.
Yeah,
That was a cool
that's
thing
awesome.
to have. And I do love going back and looking at that film just because it's so different from the way things look now.
Right.
And that was one thing that jumped out to me. And I know you've seen this because I think I heard you mention on one of the podcasts the way newspaper articles were written
Oh my gosh.
compared to the way they're written
Today?
today.
No. They were cutthroat. They were brutal. They didn't
very
like
honest,
they
blunt.
honest, blunt. Like they posted or they posted. Yeah, right. They published.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
what they wanted to. And they definitely had biases even back then. Like there's certain. It's funny. You'll look things up in the Eagle and you'll read it, and then you'll read the time. I always cross-reference the Times, and it'll be like a completely different recounting of the events with like a
Yeah.
different twist. But I mean, people are behind it, so there's always going to be, personality.
I
behind it.
noticed that when researching for a football game, I wanted to get the Red and Eagle if I could find it, but then also if it was a Lancaster team. Well, and there's some times where the two
Yeah.
articles are very different.
Yep.
Score was the same,
Right.
Outcome was the same, but how they got there
Yeah,
read pretty different.
Yeah.
It was
And
very interesting to
that's
see.
the fascinating part for me. But
So I know I'm going to jump around here, but well, no, let's stay on topic, stay on task. Tell me about the growth of Berks Nostalgia. So we know it started almost 8 years ago. When did it start to gain traction, or what do you believe helped you shoot into the stratosphere? Because you're over 20,000 followers on Facebook.
on
I believe.
Facebook, yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't know that there was like a pivotal moment besides the amount of effort I put into it. When we hit COVID and we were stuck inside for a long time, I needed a intellectual outlet to pour myself into, and I really definitely like stepped it up. Like I try to make a post every day, whether or not it's like an extensive
Sure.
story or
Right,
not, if it's
right.
just a photo or whatever, something every day. And it takes a bit of time to come up with that content, but the more effort I found I put into it, the more traction it gained. And obviously things have changed along the way. You know, I'm not just clipping newspaper articles anymore. I'm actually have gone into writing like full-fledged articles, which then I translate to a YouTube video using, you know, the footage. Gaining the drone was like a huge part of it. So over the past 4 or so years, I'd say it's really kind of grown exponentially, but consistently. Like there was no like big pivotal moment.
Okay. Sorry, lost my outline here where I wanted to go next. All right. So there's a lot of great groups or history centers in the area.
Yeah.
But their website serves for just a location, the museum. There's not a lot of information about what they're covering. You have to go to see them.
Right.
Do you think Berks Nostalgia helped step in and fill a void that there wasn't a big presence of Berks history available online?
Yeah, well, definitely. And going back to kind of your point on, you know, all of the video footage for Wilson games existed, but it was sitting in a room somewhere and, you know, nobody was able to access it in the sense that it wasn't available to the public. You brought it into the digital age, put it online, now everybody can enjoy it. I kind of see Berks Nostalgia in the same light where there's, you know, a lot of historical societies all over Berks County for almost every community, but none of them kind of have harnessed the digital age in the way that I have. I mean, it's different because I'm also, you know, a person. I'm a storyteller. I can kind of tell the story. But yeah, I would say that a lot of the organizations around have not kind of mastered the digital age, and it concerns me that that may be their downfall. I see a lot of them struggling. So yeah, I mean, there's only, you know, so much you can do when the organization itself is history in general is a lot of the times you know, appreciated more by the older people in any kind of society or a given community, and you really need the younger people to kind of pick it up and push it forward into the next generation. Otherwise, you know, where is it going to go? Nobody's going to know about it. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
that's where I'm at. As far as I know, no one else my age is kind of doing things the way I do them. So
I think that's why you have such a huge draw. You have such a huge reach now. You have the website, you have the YouTube page, you have social media, Facebook, and the thing that I love the long form articles, being able to read, and all the information, the research that you do is fantastic. But I'm a visual guy, so having the pictures,
right,
whether you know it's an old photo that you found, whether it's an old newspaper clipping, even if it's just, you know, an architectural drawing or a landscape thing, it doesn't matter. Having that stuff available, it's a draw. It grabs your attention, and it allows you to post to places like Instagram. You're not just clipping your words and throwing it up there. You're able to see, this is the topic, this is what it looked like, you know, come learn more about it.
Right.
And I definitely think it's great all around. It's fantastic. So did you start on the website, or did you go to social media first?
I would say they were at the same time.
At the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I put it all together at the same time. So.
Now, more recently, I think in the last year or so, you did start a way for people to support your efforts with your subscriptions on your website.
Right, yep. Just within the last few months, yep.
Okay, and how is that going for you? Have you been able to find an audience?
Yeah, there's definitely, slowly but surely, subscriptions are coming in. So, I mean, it's really been, for me, I've kind of been at this, like, place where, I mean, I'd love to make this, like, what I do all the time, right? Like, I love doing it. So, if people want to support that and like what I do, you know, obviously the more I can rationalize putting my time into it, you know, obviously I have a family and bills to pay. If I could make this my full-time gig, I would in a heartbeat. So.
Well, that would be sweet.
That would
cool
be
to
sweet,
see.
yeah.
That is your full-time gig. Now, you do also have a private group on Facebook, which I just found when getting ready for this show. Didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
What's it like running a group like that?
So the group kind of supplements my page in the sense that it's more of like a community where I can interact with the other people who are interested in this kind of stuff. So they can post their own. I mean, I know there's a bunch of guys who are into like the old Reading breweries and have all this paraphernalia that they've collected and want to like take pictures of and share with people, which is awesome. And other people who just have pictures or articles that they're interested in, want to share. It also serves as kind of like a place where I get ideas for content.
Sure. Yeah.
And other photos and stuff like that. So it's really just kind of a community that rallies around what I already do. So it's
The group is called Berks Nostalgia. That's on Facebook.
Yep.
You can check that out. Not difficult to join. I was able to get in just a few minutes. Answer a couple questions.
yeah. I just try to weed out the spam.
Oh, yeah. I run the Tradition Club for football on Facebook, and the amount of people that try to get in that just want to come in and put spam and scam
it's
links.
crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's nuts. Yeah.
But yeah, you have an Instagram, you have a YouTube, you have a TikTok.
I do.
You have a Reddit.
You talked about reaching the next gen.
Yeah,
I'm
all over the
like, I'm there.
Yeah.
Even though I'm thinking, is it going to be banned tomorrow? I don't know. Wasn't tomorrow the day?
I think it's the 19th.
Oh, it's the 19th. Okay, we got a few
I think
weeks
we got
yet.
about 2 weeks or so
Okay.
to go. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
See where that hay.
What was
Yeah.
the reception like from your friends and family when you started this, or did they know about it at the beginning? Is it something you brought up to them? Did they find it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't. It wasn't like a thing like I announced. Like
Right.
I'm starting this. I think over the course of time they've kind of like, oh, okay, that's you. I'm
That's
doing
good.
that. But yeah, everybody's supportive, and sometimes I'll hear from my friends that they'll talk to someone and they're like, yeah, Berks Nostalgia is my friend Alexa, and they're like, what? I'm like, I'm literally just another person, but okay.
Well, for the longest time, I had no idea, and it didn't matter. I was just, I appreciate
Right.
whoever's doing this, and I didn't even know if it was a group of people. I was
Right.
I appreciate whoever's
Wow.
doing this. I love it. And then I think you were tagged in one of the podcasts. I think that's
Yeah.
when I figured it out. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, she's a Wilson graduate. I was like,
Yeah.
that's cool.
There we
Well,
go.
going back to kind of like some sort of pivotal moment as to when it got. I think for the longest time I was kind of anonymously behind it, and I didn't really promote myself as being behind it because you're never sure what people like want, how much they want to know. But I found that people actually want to know the personality behind the page. So
Was that difficult to put yourself out? Like,
it's
and
a little
say, "This is
scary.
me"?
Yeah, I mean it's because especially on social media, everybody's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
be kind of
Yeah.
crazy, but you grow a thick skin after a while and you just deal with it, and it's been fine really, but
How, I mean, we can jump right there because that's something I wanted to ask. How do you respond to, what is the reception like of your post? Do you get
Mm-hmm.
a lot of animosity or people second guessing you? Or is it usually people just commenting how, oh, I remember this, thank you for posting this?
I would say,
is
yeah.
it a run the gamut?
the vast majority is positive.
Okay.
There's always going to be someone who wants to turn it political, wants wants any opportunity to take a dump on the city of Reading, and just wants to fight for the sake of fighting.
Social media
All
commentary.
constructive stuff.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
very
that's
constructive.
definitely-
And for the most part, like if it's like very like obscene or racist or whatever, I just delete. Like I don't
Delete,
even
yeah, move
I don't
on.
even engage with that. But there's also a really cool tool that Facebook lets you use called a hide button.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you can hide their comment, and only they and their friends can see it, but nobody else can interact with it.
Right.
So I kind of
it's-
see it as a gift to society that nobody can. Anyone who can see it knows this person and can see how much of an
A
a-hole
jerk
they
they
are.
are,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough running,
It is.
covering high school kids, Wilson football stuff. That's the only vantage point that we have is talking about the high school kids. And like, I'm very strict on what you can and cannot say
Right.
on my pages about high school kids.
Oh, of course.
So
yeah.
you're like, I'm not tolerating that.
No,
So,
no.
and sometimes it gets a little bit rough. So I wanted to, because I generally avoid comments like
Yeah.
going to pick, because I know someone is going to do exactly what you say they do.
Yeah.
Go in those directions that I
yeah.
don't want.
And they're looking for a
They're
Oh, they're
looking for
looking.
someone to come
Yes,
back.
they
Yeah.
want to be engaged
Yeah.
with in a negative way.
I'm
but
gonna comment on this post.
on our live stream.
Right,
You're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
hop on there. Yeah. How about? I'm sure this has changed over the years, but right now, when you start your next project, and I know you said that you would like to post daily, which must like be a quick photo that you found. But then, how do you decide on what gets the long form treatment, and how long does it take you to go from your initial idea to publishing it?
Yeah, I would say it varies a lot. I would say some of my bigger projects, like you know, when the building on I think it was North Third Street collapsed, or was it North Fourth? I'm not sure. It was a Keystone Wagon Works. It was an old mill building.
Yeah.
And it depends. Like that, I have to go down. I have to take drone shots. I have to do all the research, and then I have to edit and cut the footage together. So that can take weeks. Not like, and I'm not working on it like consecutively every day. I'm kind of working on it as I can. So maybe maybe it's 20 hours over the course of 2 weeks. And then there's the projects again where I'm just on Google News Archives and I find something cool and I can do a quick write-up about it, and that can take like an hour. So you're looking at anything from like an hour to 20 hours maybe. More extensive project, another one would have been Dreamland Park.
Yep.
Oh,
That was a big one, yeah.
I really enjoyed that one.
You like the Dreamland Park?
Just because I won't say grew up, but like I've heard like
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I heard the stories, and mostly like I heard like my parents and aunts and uncles like talk about those stories.
Yeah.
Like, and so like and never really knew like what was
Right.
going on until I was older, and then like you'd hear more of the stories, and so like seeing like some of the things, I was like, oh man, I never heard that part of the stuff. Like
Right.
because they were all just like, it's just
Well, that was
it's a
one.
wild. It's a wild.
That was
story.
one of, I would say, Berks County's most kind of heinous crimes committed. So it kind of has that, like, everybody knows of it in that way. But yeah, it was, and for years people are like, you got to do Dreamland Park, you got to do Dreamland Park, and I was like, I don't want to trespass up there. I've heard,
Right.
people don't take kindly
They
to
don't
that.
like it, yeah.
Well, the stars aligned. The guy who, he's a realtor, was selling it at the time.
Oh.
It was like, you want to go to Dreamland Park? And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yes,
yes,
please.
absolutely. So I literally had free reign on the place.
That's
Just got to
awesome.
walk
That's cool.
around and take video.
'Cause
So
I know that hasn't always been the case. You went on the record on one of the podcasts
Oh,
to say
yeah.
you may have trespassed
I,
to get some shots.
I'm not above it for for a good story. Yeah, I mean, you got to be respectful
Sure.
first and foremost. I'm not there to destroy anything, but for the sake of history, like
Yeah.
it needs to be preserved.
Well, I mean, Justin and I have trespassed on Wilson property.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
So when the stadium was being renovated,
Oh, yeah.
and they had everything locked down, we may or may not have snuck
Uh-oh.
on. I wanted pictures because I like to document the
Yeah.
process of everything, and I wanted it for the webpage so people could see this is what
Mm-hmm.
the old stadium looked like. This is what it looked like during construction. This is what the new I wanted everything.
Yeah.
So he snuck on. I
Yeah.
snuck on. I don't have to I won't throw you under
No,
the bus.
no, yeah, no,
Yeah,
he
this is
didn't
like
do
what
anything.
11 years ago now, 12 years ago. So it doesn't even matter anymore. But I did.
There's
I mean,
no school tomorrow.
technically,
Yeah,
technically for the Aurora pictures, I wasn't trespassing because someone who had access let me into the stadium, so
There
I
you
don't
go.
count that as trespassing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do. You know?
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? What do they say?
Ask-
Well-
ask for forgiveness.
Ask
for Exactly.
permission. Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you said, it's different because like you're not there. You're
No.
not there to destroy anything. You're
No,
there
right.
like adding value. You
Yeah.
know, so like
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're going other places that are not just school district property.
Right,
No.
right.
You're hitting other places that the people may not take too kindly to you being there, or the police may not want you to
Well,
be
right.
there. But
yeah.
um,
I've never been caught. And at this point, I feel like I haven't had to do that in a long time. Like people are now reaching out to me.
you have the clout now. You
I
know,
guess.
you have the
Yeah.
ability.
Yeah.
You just flash the card.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm here with
Do you
Berks
know who I
Nostalgia. Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah. Some of my favorite articles have been the ones related to. I don't want to like ghost stories, but ones related to things that have ghost stories attached to them. I know I found a few of those when you first started, some interesting ones. But I think I appreciate the most, and this is completely centered on me, is when I'm like, man, I would love to know more about that. And then boom, there's an article about it. Like the Robinsonia
Exactly.
train station was
Yeah.
one that
Yeah.
I
Really?
drive by there fairly regularly. I'm just like, I wonder what the story is behind that. And then, just like in the last month you posted about it.
That's
So I
funny.
was really excited to read about that and the history and the relationship to the old train station.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really what draws me to this stuff is the exploration part. Like with Dreamland Park, I want to go. I want to be there. I want to take pictures of it. I want to explore it myself and then kind of turn that into, communicate that back to the public of what I find, both there and in, historical documentation. So those are my favorite to do, the ones where I can actually go on site and, look around.
So, we talked about it a little already. We mentioned Google Newspaper Archive, but what are your other resources? How do you make your content? Where do you go for the information? Do you still hit up libraries, or is it mostly online?
Mostly I do it from the comfort of my own office.
Sure.
Yeah. I've had to go into libraries on an occasion. Sometimes it, warrants a visit, but for the most part, I'm using Google News Archives, which for the longest time wasn't searchable by keyword again. It was, and then it wasn't, and now it is again.
Oh, it is again.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good information to know. Because
Yeah.
I've been using newspapers.com
Yes.
from my football research, because thankfully, with Wilson being in the Lancaster-Lebanon League, all the Lancaster papers covered it. Red and Eagles, not on newspapers.com.
No,
Can't
times.
search on there.
Only up till 1939,
Right,
too.
exactly,
Yeah.
which doesn't help me with football. It started in 1945 for
Right.
Wilson. So not having the local Berks County news in that is unfortunate, but because it's an LL team, I'm able to find all the links on there. I
That
used to
works.
always get my stuff from Google News Archive, but I couldn't search for what I wanted. I had to
Right.
find the date of the game and then go to the day after for the
Yep.
publication date. And unfortunately, there's a huge swath that is just not available.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I run into that a lot.
It
But
is.
I'm glad to hear that that's searchable again. I'll have to.
It is.
check
I don't know if
back.
it's as accurate as newspapers.com is.
Newspapers.com is really
Super
good.
accurate, yeah. Like that is, unfortunately, again, it only goes up to 1939. But if it's previous to that, then you're golden. But otherwise, just cross-referencing, then, before newspapers, Google News Archives was searchable, I would just cross-reference the date. But besides those, I'm trying to think. There's... it's mostly newspapers. There's some kind of photo archives, like the Hagley Digital Archives have a lot of great aerials of Berks County, Reading, but even like around the suburbs as well, up from like 1920s and 30s and 40s. The old J. Victor Dallin aerials, which was a guy he was like a British Navy pilot, and he came to America and then founded a aerial photography business
Nice.
out of Philly. So yeah, we have some really awesome aerial photos of around here.
I think so. I became a member in the last 2 months or whatever, and I think the first thing I did was the research.
There you go. Yeah, you pull that up. That's everything I
immediately
use.
went into
Yeah.
this. I was like, this is perfect because this is
Yep.
good stuff to check out and augment any of my research that I want to see. Or I love going
Right.
back and seeing photography of my grandparents' old farm, because that's now homes. I can pull
Right.
up on Google
It's a
Earth
neighborhood,
and see, hey,
right? I
There's a
know.
home right there where that giant sinkhole was.
Oh God! Don't tell the people that live there that.
Well, it seems like they've survived. They're fine. I mean, that sinkhole had you wouldn't imagine the stuff that farmers would dump into those sinkholes.
It's full. It's
It
full.
was full. So, one of the more recent things that I've noticed you at least tagging on the photos or mentioning in the caption was colorization of old photos. Is
Yeah.
that something you undertake in Photoshop or a program, or do
Yeah.
you have someone do that?
No, I do it in Photoshop. So in Photoshop there are like filters. It's AI based. So I colorize it, and AI gives me a base, and then I go back and I overhaul it, because it's usually not super accurate when you just let the AI do it.
Okay.
So then I go back and fill in a bunch of colors, and sometimes it does okay on its own, and it doesn't take me too long, but I can spend an hour or two colorizing a photo.
Okay, yeah,
But-
that's interesting because I noticed that recently.
Yeah.
That you were doing that, and actually just the other night, my sister mentioned it's like I saw a photo on Facebook of them selling trees on Penn Street, and she's like, "Did you know anything about that, Dad?" Our dad was born in 1954. I was like, I'm pretty sure that photo was from I said the 20s or 30s.
It was from the 20s.
We looked
yeah.
it up. I think you said 1910.
Oh, you're right. It was from 1910. Yeah, because the pagoda was
So
new.
My
Yeah.
dad was like, "How old do you think I
Yeah.
am?"
Not quite.
But yeah, it was a really cool picture. I don't even remember if that one was colorized, but that's the
It was,
the one that
yeah. That was my
jumps out to
Christmas
me.
photo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it jumps out to me because she just mentioned it. And I was like, that was Berks
Oh.
Nostalgia. I was like, she's coming on the show on Sunday.
Oh, man.
So, we talked a little bit about Wilson. Said we're all alums. You
Yeah.
graduated class of 09. I mentioned to you that I bought your Wilson Prexy shirt because
Yep.
Wilson used to be known as the Presidents.
That's right.
And you have a lot of throwbacks. That's one of the things that you offer is merchandise to obviously help supplement your research and activities. And you don't have just the Wilson Prexies or Sinking Spring High, which you're wearing one of your Sinking Spring
Represent.
shirts right now. You have a bunch of the other basically defunct schools from around Berks County that when they went through those mass mergers, a lot of got lost to history. Do you like to do any research into Wilson School District? Is that something that you've ever focused on? I know you've made a few posts about it
Yeah.
over the years.
So that kind of originated, and kind of again going back to COVID when I kind of really went full throttle. The first thing I did was a defunct schools of Berks County series. So I went back and kind of covered all of the school districts as they were before the consolidations in the 50s and 60s, and obviously Sinking Spring, Wilson merged in 54. So and then I created T-shirts based on those old high schools. So that's kind of where that merch comes from. But I have done research into Wilson. I put an entire article together. It's probably the most comprehensive one I did just because it was my own school, right? I was interested in it. But that actually brings me to something I was going to ask you. Are you related to Alan?
Yeah, that was my
Yeah.
grandfather.
Really?
Yes.
He has that
I used
fantastic
his book.
history. Yep.
Yes, I
Yeah.
used that
So-
book as foundation.
So do I.
Yeah. Awesome
Yeah.
book. No,
Yeah, that
that's
was
really
my
cool.
grandfather.
Oh.
Yeah.
The same one I was talking earlier lived on
Reading
Avenue.
Okay.
Yep, just a few blocks
Wow.
down from us.
Yeah.
Well, and then I got thinking about it when I did that, and that was in 2020, obviously. And I was like, well, Wilson's centennial is coming up in the 29 to 30 school year, which at this point is like, what, 4.5 years
Oh
away.
my gosh.
Is
Our kids will be in high school.
I know.
oh my gosh. Is
Ugh.
anything?
All right, old man.
I feel like a book should be written for that.
Yeah.
And I feel like obviously using his as
Justin
a foundation.
should have to do
but
it, right?
oh, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be.
Is that something you want to tackle?
I
Or are you just
wouldn't
hoping
mind.
someone does it? or
Well,
you
I
could
wouldn't mind
contribute to collaborating?
collaborating and contributing to it.
That,
You
that
know,
would be really cool.
That
Yeah.
would be cool. I wonder
Because-
we should reach out to Dr. Trickett.
I was gonna say we can.
because when was that published? That was in like the late
That was
90s.
90s.
It was 90s. That was before
think
I
it was
lived here.
mid-
So
right.
like I grew up
Mid-90s.
coming back to this area because my grandfather still
Oh.
lived here and my dad grew up here and everything. But then I moved back here when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
In 2000, and
Okay.
then graduated in 2002, and then. Like, you know, I was a teenager and was like, oh, you know, like I'm moving for 2 years. I'll go to college and I won't come back. And
Right. Here you are.
here I am. you
Yeah.
know, 24 years later.
I think
like-
I said the same thing.
but,
yeah, right.
so yeah, like it's one of those things where, you know, I thought it was cool at the time, mostly because I had grown up in small little towns where like everybody knew everybody and had like family there and everything. But like I wasn't related to anyone in those towns or had have any history in those towns. And then I moved to a place where I did and like people. So with the last name of Raffoff, like when you go somewhere and somebody says like your name correctly, you're like, oh, they know.
They
like,
know who you are. Yeah, they
either
know your story.
me or they know my parents or they know my aunts or uncles or they know my
Right.
cousins or something. Like, so it was an interesting experience. And you mentioned that with Bill Haas converting the video. Like perfect example. First day of school. I know your uncle. Yes, you
Of
do.
course you do.
Yeah, like
So your grandfather published this, I believe, in 1984. So we're
Yeah.
30 years
So
removed.
there's a lot to. My point. Yeah, my point
decades.
was there's a lot
Yeah.
to catch up on.
Yeah.
they'll
A
have
lot has
been-
happened since then.
So he did the first essentially 65 years of the district about then, I guess.
Yeah, and then there's about
so
40,
You're going to have
35.
35 more
to
before
catch up on.
the centennial, the 100. So that is definitely something that someone should pick up and do. Would be interesting. And honestly, now is the time. You've
To
got
start.
4
Yeah,
years
absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely. You need to
even
start
if it's
planning
not
now.
going to be traditionally published,
Right.
even if it's just a PDF like this one was,
Could be,
or just
yeah.
a paper thing that is manufactured by the school. There
Right.
should be something about it. That is certainly something that probably should be brought up. And I think that's a great. I wasn't even thinking that was coming up anytime
Yeah.
soon. But yeah, that's That's great. My dad did just text me and said that Roy Snyder is going to be doing the Schools of Wilson for his calendar next year. I don't know if you've ever seen the
that's
calendars
cool.
that Roy Snyder produces. So last year for 2024, he
they're-
did local restaurants in and around Berks County.
He does
Okay.
like
Watercolor
like,
paintings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And he did May's Sandwich Shop, so he brought one in and gave one to us, and then we sold them for him around the holidays last year.
Nice.
This year, I believe his family vacations down at the Jersey Shores,
Yeah.
so he did locations there around the Jersey Shores. But my dad just said that his one for 2026 will be, I guess, different photos from around the Wilson School District, or different paintings from around the Wilson School District. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Wilson itself, to me, it was fascinating kind of going back and seeing the transition of how schools have progressed in the last century. Like in the late 1800s, which is about when things started, it was like very much one-room schoolhouse. It was a pay school. Like there was no public school then. You paid a certain amount to send your kid to school, and they, probably didn't go past what would be considered 7th or 8th grade. Because, you had to work.
Right.
It wasn't until the 1920s that boroughs really kind of took control of their schools and, used tax dollars to build
More
the Sinking
uniformity
Springs,
and-
the original Wilson, and these schools were small. Like you said, you came from a small community. Everybody knew each other. There was an intimacy to these small community schools, which has kind of been lost as things have developed. And they're like, I would consider Wilson kind of a mega school now.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
It's much different. So I kind of find that fascinating.
Well,
Which
I talk about this all the time, and I know it's just tangentially related, but like I went to a school where I would have graduated with 70 kids.
Yep.
So I did part of my student teaching at Antietam, and it reminds me so much. I felt so at home because it was
Antietam's like the only one left
It
like
reminded me
that.
of where I went to school from 3rd grade through 10th grade, and like I felt so at home, and I had an awesome experience. But like when I moved to Wilson, there were 70 kids in my gym class on the first day. And,
Right.
Yeah.
What was
and
your
I graduated-
graduating class?
I think it was like 360.
That's what mine was, 363 or something like that.
And
yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, it's grown by 50%. Like
Right.
What are the classes now?
They're all like over 500 now.
Yeah, we
Well,
were about
like-
500.
You were even.
Yeah.
Yes, it's wild.
So I
Yeah.
believe actually Natalie's class is somewhat small.
So
Then there's Austin's class.
Austin's class is huge.
Yeah, Austin's class is
I believe
gigantic.
it's huge. I know.
It varies that much year to year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so,
so
like-
they're actually only separated by a year. So
Yeah.
my oldest
Oh.
Natalie's in 6th grade right now. That's just started at Southern. Austin's right behind in 5th grade. And Natalie's class is on the smaller side and usually had 3 to 4 teachers. His has 5 to 6.
5 to 6.
How do they
At the
deal
one
with that
building.
fluctuation?
Yeah,
year to
well, you
year?
have
Well,
teachers moving like
Austin-
with them.
Oh,
Austin's
okay.
teacher last year in 4th grade is
now
his
his
teacher
teacher
in
in 5th grade because they had like there's like a bubble and then you
Wow.
have to like
Yeah.
shift.
Well, when I finished that article, 2020, it was the summer 2020, they'd come out with this
The-
comprehensive plan of
Oh,
like
yeah.
enclosing Central and the main building. And I don't know if any of that ever came to fruition.
That was
So-
all. So in February 2020, they were just getting ready to
Yeah.
go to the buildings for like a Q&A with staff, I
Yes.
believe.
And
then
COVID
they,
derailed that,
And then
right?
they were doing the public thing, and then March came, and COVID
Yeah.
came, and all of that got put on hold.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then by the time they revisited it, they like I think the costs had gone up like
Oh, of
40,
course.
40 to
Yeah.
50%. And it's obviously one of those things where like it's clearly hindsight. I'm not saying like, oh, they should have. Like, no,
Right.
like it's one of those where like you don't know what to do.
You can't know.
You can't be reckless, you
Yeah.
know, like and I get that.
There's a lot of
But
money.
like looking back, it's like, oh, they could have done it for a fraction of the cost. Well,
Of what now?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but like at the same time, you're like, yeah, but they could have built like 30 years ago for a fraction.
yeah,
You're
how
like,
do you-
that's
you
just how
gotta-
it works, you know. So that got pushed aside. I know they've moved forward with the performing arts piece,
Yep.
which is
That I know,
good
yeah.
because that was
And-
one of the pieces that like had kind of not been pushed up, you know, in a lot of the other things.
But
So that
that's
was good.
scheduled to be
'Cause-
ready for the start of next school year,
Is
right?
it?
See, this is gonna look bad because I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm just like-
I want to say that it was supposed to be ready for the start in the fall of
Okay.
2025.
Okay, that very well may be.
Because I
Right.
believe we all have kids in our orchestra and band,
Right.
and because the
where do
auditorium
they-
is non-existent,
Right.
they're piecemealing it and doing limited by class or by orchestra and band instead of doing it combined at Southern
Okay.
or at West, depending on the
Right,
elementary
the
school
split.
you're at.
so it's limited. You don't have as big of a group because you don't have as much space. But I
Right.
believe that was only supposed to be true for this school year.
Okay.
So I think the new Performing Arts Center
It'll
is
be
supposed to be
ready.
ready to go for the start of the 2025-2026 school year.
Interesting.
So they have about 6.5 months, 7 months left of construction. I mean, it's one of those things. Construction, the beginning feels like it goes so slow, but
Right.
as soon as a lot of the walls go up, things really start to
Pick up.
And I think a lot of that groundwork,
and I know-
groundwork, has been long done, and they've got
And
walls up now.
And I know there's
so-
like once they got a lot of the steel beams in
Right.
place too. Like
so
it certainly has started to look like
like a building again.
very
Something's there.
different
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting. I haven't been over there in a while, so maybe I'll have to go check it out.
We'll keep an eye on it over the next 7 months and see how it goes. Hopefully, it is ready for the start, or if not right at the start, by the time they want
wanna
to
do
concerts and
concerts.
plays. Yeah, because
Right,
the high
right.
school, they do a whole bunch of play. They got a fall play, I think,
Right.
in early November usually
Yeah.
that they want to do, and there's fall and winter concerts. So hopefully that it'll be ready for them this coming school year. It's crazy to think that we're already in 2025.
I know.
So you mentioned it. You dropped a hint about it when we talked about the progression of Berks Nostalgia. Tell us about your drone. What when did that come into play, and what caused you to go in that direction?
So the drone stuff, I mean, I had thought for a while like this would really be beneficial and add kind of another cool layer to what I do. So finally in summer of 22, my husband got one for me for my birthday.
Nice.
And yeah, so I don't know. Do you want me to talk a little bit about like how you have to register a drone?
Well,
and
I
the
want to
background?
say,
So I remember
what
seeing that.
are the requirements and the challenges when it
Yeah.
comes to owning a drone? What rules you have to follow,
Yeah.
things like that.
So the FAA does not mess around when it comes to things in their airspace.
Sure.
If you're just a recreational flyer, you have to register it. If it's over like something like half a pound, which 99% of drones are,
Most of
you have
them
to
are.
register it with the FAA and obviously have a serial number and your name attached to it. It also has to have something now called remote ID, which is basically kind of like similar to a broadcast module on a plane, which shows what the plane is, who's flying it, but in a drone. So and this will kind of lead in. You wanted to talk about some drone stuff, but the FAA knows what's in the airspace at all times. So, but if you want to do anything commercially with the drone, you have to take the Part 107 test, and it's basically just a written. I don't remember how many questions it was. It might have been like 40 or 50, and you have to go to a testing center. I had to go up to Allentown Airport
Oh, jeez.
and take a test. But I passed it, and it's good for 3 years. So then you can earn money basically doing it, and you
Okay.
can do stuff commercially. So if you have a YouTube channel and you want to monetize it, you actually have to have your Part 107. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew you had to do the registration. I didn't realize there was a test
Yeah.
involved and things like. So is the test? Do you know the FAA rules, or like what is the test? What are they testing?
it's a lot of airspace rules. It's funny. A lot of the stuff is stuff you need to know as like a pilot of a
Sure.
plane. So, but some of it's yeah, it's
I
at this
didn't know
point.
that part.
Yeah,
Right.
it's. I mean, you study for it, you're fine. It's one of those things like you do your due diligence, you'll be okay. But
Yeah.
it's not stuff people off the street usually know. No.
I feel like it's probably one of those when you're taking it, you're like, well, I am never going to actually need this, but
Yeah.
it has to be in that test
Exactly.
for a reason.
It's
Because
exactly.
I'd say you'd be surprised, but we might not be surprised. But like they probably had to make that clear to people.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Common sense is not common.
Nope.
So, I mean, Berks Nostalgia was already filling a void in the social space on the internet, and then I think you adding the drone just took it to another level because
yeah.
you're able to cover things that literally no person can go to,
Yeah.
at least easily,
Yeah.
unless you have a pilot license, essentially.
Yep.
So you're just adding. I mean, probably didn't come in more handy for quick breaking news than the fire on Neversink.
It did.
Probably was huge for you to be able to get the
The
video.
footage, yeah. I mean, that was like obviously a kind of standalone event. But for me, when I kind of do stories about architecture, it's like clutch because I can get up close to the details and I can see angles of the building that you can't see when you're standing on the ground.
Well, and ones that I guess have partially collapsed, you could
Well,
get
that-
ones
yeah.
where you wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
go on foot.
No. So yeah, I mean, the drone is it's really also allowed me to document now, as opposed to, just documenting history, which obviously I do, but like with that,
You're
I'm
adding to it.
exactly.
You're adding to the
Right,
history,
It's-
current.
it's the past, it's the present, and it's a continual story of whatever I'm covering. So.
Well, I could talk for another hour. I want to keep it to 10 more minutes.
Okay. Oh no, we didn't even get to the pagoda yet.
Well, that's where I'm going.
Okay. All right.
So we're gonna finish
He
here in
would
the next
not
10 minutes.
miss that opportunity.
I wanted to talk about the drone sightings, the quote drone sightings
Yeah.
of concern, but you did an excellent post. So if anyone was interested about the recent drone sightings that have been happening all over the East Coast, Alexa already put up something on Berks Nostalgia that should kind of clear up some of the
Yeah.
the
You gotta know what you're
misinformation
looking
that's
at.
out there.
Yeah.
I want to dive in. There's so many things I want to talk about. We're not going to get to. I know your big. I feel like your big break, at least widespread, was Stoneman Willie,
Yeah.
which was something I literally
yeah.
had never heard of until
Really?
you started posting about
Yeah,
it.
I didn't know about it.
I didn't know anything about it until you started writing about it.
Interesting.
So that was awesome to learn about. I know you were featured in the New York Times.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a media whirlwind that week, but I kind of just went along for the ride, so it was really cool.
But yeah, so it was great to see that. We already talked about social media comments and dissenters. I do want to jump into the pagoda. So first of all, I listened to your podcast. You were on the Organic Spaceship a year and a half ago, and you didn't seem to at that time know a lot about what was going on.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, yeah, I think they're doing bids, or it
Yeah.
needs a lot of work. And then fast forward, and now you are a board member
Yeah.
on the foundation for the Reading Pagoda.
Well-
So talk to us a little bit about your relationship with the pagoda.
So basically, at that point, I was just a concerned citizen like everybody else. I had heard the news where that it needed a ton of work, and but that was announced in like April, and then that was like July or August. I was on that show, and I had
Yes.
heard nothing, and I was like, "What's going on?" Right? So I actually reached out to one of my friends, Suzanne Cody. She's part of Muhlenberg Green Architects. We've done
Junior
projects
League.
together. Junior League, yeah.
Yeah, I
She was the
watched
one
the
I was on with
YouTube,
Junior
yep,
League, yeah.
okay.
And I was like, because I knew she was on the board. I was like, what's going on? She's like, hey, you should join the board. And I was like, oh gosh, okay. I need something else to do, right? So I applied, and they interview you, and it was pretty much automatic yes. So that was last January. So I'm at
Okay, so
now
you're a
a
year.
full year on the board. Kind of my point with joining the board is I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator. I can kind of take what information is happening around it, and I can deliver it to the public in a way they can understand, and hopefully, be a part of this process. Because to me, the coolest part about this for me is going to be once the construction starts, I want to document it.
Yep.
At like 100%, I want to be there almost weekly and kind of tell the public what's happening when it's happening. It's a public building. In a lot of cases, people are donating, and I feel like they have a right to know where their money is going and what's being done. So yeah, I have found out that anything, with local government takes about 3 times as longer
This is my favorite topic.
than you would
ever.
expect it to take, because I had no
Joey's gonna
joining.
need a pause for his blood pressure medicine.
I had no idea what to expect. Like, are we, starting construction next month when I joined? I don't know. I didn't know. Yeah, well, it turns out it takes, almost a full calendar year to actually get the gears moving, which is okay. It got a little scary because they needed to get the bids awarded by the end of 2024, or they risked losing the $3 million in
Grant.
ARPA funds.
Okay.
That were set aside during COVID that
Yep.
they needed to allocate it. And it was like December when they finally awarded the bids.
Wait, I think you talked about that with Jason on Berks Weekly.
I
You're
did.
Like,
Never
they were
know.
getting ready to
Yeah.
to get the bids
Went
out.
right down to the last second there. But it's good. It's tentatively going to be starting second week of January. So you guys should be seeing maybe scaffolding going up soon. But
There you are. There's your name.
It's exciting.
Right
Yeah.
at the website there. Also, someone you're familiar with, Chris Daubert,
Oh yeah,
board
Chris.
member,
I had him as a history teacher, and then
Okay. I would-
and Mike Reinert as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mike's a great guy.
Mike's a great guy.
Hey, Chris Dalbert is just an
He's the man.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is awesome.
Yeah, I had him as a teacher, and then a bunch of us came on the board right around the same time last year, and he was like the next month after me. I'm like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, can I call you Chris? Like, what? It's so weird calling a teacher then by their first name. I'm like, I'm just gonna call you Mr. Daubert. But yeah, a lot of good people on the board.
I originally reached out to you in mid December, just like,
Okay.
hey, any chance you could come on December
That's
22nd?
right.
I
Yeah.
knew it was short notice.
Yeah, no, it was
and crazy
holidays were
holiday.
nuts.
But the reason I wanted you to come on then was because I wanted to talk about
The blinking
lights, because
yes.
this is where this starts with me, because you know, grown and raised here, I
Tradition.
looked every single Christmas Eve. My family took us somewhere to watch the lights. It wasn't always the
Right.
same spot, but we always got to see it. And years that it was foggy were the worst because you didn't get to see it.
Aw.
Terrible. But I passed this on to my daughters, and we had a great time finding a spot. We actually found a spot where Justin and his son would come over
Aw.
and be in the same area, and we'd watch it. And then
Yeah.
we saw, I think, either the day before or the morning of Christmas Eve 2021,
Okay.
I want to say, is when they're like, hey, this isn't happening this year.
Yeah. And
I was just like, I feel like this could have been communicated a little bit better.
yeah,
And also the reasoning behind
Behind
it.
it,
Because
yes.
people, I think, are still, well,
they're
it-
still, yes.
they're still upset. And like, I get it. And I hope you're not the one that I would send the email to now. Because I just inquire, like in 2022, I was like, hey,
Yeah. Is it happening?
hey,
Yeah,
is this
it
happening? Or I wanted information on it. And like, it took forever to get information back.
Right.
It just seemed that there wasn't anyone that definitely had definitive answers for anything,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So then it's dragged on now year after year. So it's just
Right.
like, what's going on? And we see people all the time say, if the lights can run right now,
Yeah.
why can't they blink?
Yep.
And it's just, I didn't like, not expecting you to have the answers. I just wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah, I
tradition
do. I
and-
do have some understanding. Obviously, I'm not an electrician, so I can't tell you the nitty gritty of like. But it's my understanding is that turning them off and on continually will overload the system. The electrical system is very much out of date in the pagoda, and I'm actually working on a video and a comprehensive history of the pagoda that's going to be coming out in the next couple weeks. Which will explain kind of how bad the electrical has been in the pagoda for like decades. But it was my understanding that it was a volunteer went and did that.
Right.
And it was so bad that the volunteer was actually getting shocked. And had to wear a glove
Oh, wow.
because it was like overloading the circuit or whatever.
Even
so
with
I
the
promise
change to
you.
LEDs, like that was
Yeah,
still a major issue.
yeah, it
'Cause
was-
that happened in the last decade, right?
The LEDs were in 2008. Yep, that's
Okay,
when they were
15
installed.
plus years
Yeah,
ago.
it's been a
Okay.
while. I don't know what about it is like just
Well, I
not
ho-
able to handle the load
I hope
of
you're
it.
preserving that glove that he wore. Like,
I don't
hope
know what
that's gonna
happened to
be
the
on
glove.
display.
But I promise you it would not, because nobody wants to not blink. Like, it's tradition. Everybody wants that to happen. But if it's putting the pagoda in risk of like a fire or somebody
I-
getting
I-
hurt,
Right,
it's
no,
really not.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
Like, but this.
but it
doesn't-
needs to be communicated that way,
Right,
and it's
that was
not.
always
Well,
been
People
my
are-
thing.
yeah.
And that's the thing too, where you kind of mentioned like you feel like that's a space, and not to be like, oh, you should, but like
Right.
that. It's good to have that perspective on the board or
Yeah.
in groups that like, hey, we may have people who are really good on this board at like knowing the history or explaining something, but like having people who can
Communicate
that,
it,
yeah.
and that's
The-
a big part of
and
why I
also
joined.
have
optics.
connections to get to the channels
Yeah.
to help
Exactly.
spread
The
that
optics
information.
around it over the last 4
Just
years
Have
just
not been
haven't
good.
been
I
great.
know.
No.
I know. I'm
'cause
hoping to change that all around.
We know that the people for the foundation and people with the city government, they care about it, but no one's been putting out there of
Yeah.
why we care about, why we want to change this, how we're going to change this, why we can't do the things we do, why it hasn't been reopened. And obviously now we know with construction starting, obviously it can't be reopened. And they already
Right.
did stuff exterior and on the grounds to improve the area. But it just feels like the communication and the optics surrounding it haven't been great over the last
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
I think a lot of that goes back to, again, nobody has really harnessed the power of which social media. It's how we communicate now. Like, nobody, back in the day, it was the newspapers, and nobody's getting the newspapers anymore. So how do we communicate with each other, and how do we communicate that information? And I kind of have a platform at this point where I feel like I can get information out. You can't be certain everybody's going to be reached, but
Oh no.
you try.
You got to try, right? You got to put forth the effort. And leading up to Christmas this year, I know WFMZ tried their best to
Yeah.
talk about the tradition that it was something was happening, but their headline made it sound to me like
It was being
going
blinked.
to blink.
I know.
So
Oh my gosh.
I saw the headline.
He
and
sent it
I was
to me.
like, okay, and I opened it. I was like, okay, but I immediately was like, I need to send this to Joey before he sees it, because I know when he sees that headline what he's,
He's
going
gonna
to
think,
think.
oh no.
And
I would,
The-
yeah.
the
Joey's
Disappointment.
going to have an
Yeah.
aneurysm if
the
he
world
reads
is
the
not
headline.
ready for that. So I sent it to him. I'm like, I have something that's going to make you angry. I'm like, but I needed to share
Brace
it with you.
him for the news.
Well, I remember I think it was Christmas Eve morning, 2021, when it was announced, broken by I don't know, Reading Eagle or someone, that, hey, this isn't happening this year. And I remember telling my daughters, and they started crying, and I felt so bad. I was just like, oh, that's rough.
That is sad.
And then like the next year comes, nope, it's not happening.
No,
and
I
then
know.
Next year comes, no, it's not happening. Then this year comes, and he sends me that article. And he's like, don't get excited.
Listen.
I'm like, look, I appreciate the Reading Fire Department doing so. I appreciate who's
something.
ever organizing it,
Yeah.
doing
Absolutely,
something. Like
absolutely.
this is
And
not a
we-
knock on
we
them
still
at all.
Take
No,
our
I know.
kids.
We
and
still,
we go
we
and
still
watch
sat
it.
and watched it, and you
Right.
could see it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're from
Pretty
Werner
far
Farm,
away, yeah.
watching from Werner Farm,
Yeah.
looking at the pagoda. You'd think like you're not going to see fire truck lights up there. You absolutely can see them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we still did it, still enjoyed it, but it's not what the tradition was. It's not
Right.
the original thing. So I'm very excited to hear that
I'm hopeful.
progress is being
We're
made.
hopeful that next year will be the year.
That would be
definitely by the
fantastic.
year after that, but hopefully next year.
Yeah. And there's a ton of more stuff I could ask about the pagoda, and wanted to jump into the iconography and all the stuff that you found that you've been going through as
Yeah,
the clean out
we've
was
had to
happening.
clean it out.
I would love to talk about that. Just ran out of time, but the last thing I want to point out is, in addition to your own Berks Nostalgia web store, you have taken it upon yourself to
Yeah.
make a pagoda shop.
One of my big projects wrapped up right before Christmas because we wanted to get it launched so people could buy stuff for Christmas. Obviously I have experience creating designs and putting online merch shops together. So I basically, worked with an online vendor and created the designs, and they're fulfilled through that vendor and shipped right to your door. So, and all the proceeds that we earn go directly to the restoration fund.
And I can say for certain that everything works as you just discussed, because
Yeah.
I have the hat behind me. I don't know.
Yep.
You can see it on screen. It's right above my head. But you have the calendar. So it's a cool store. It's nice to have that. And did you create the design? Is
I
that
did,
you?
yeah. Most of them were by me. There's a couple that were done by a fellow board member as well.
Okay. So it's a great way to support the pagoda and the renovations and get something in return to show your Berks County pride.
Absolutely.
In the icon up there on the mountain. So, well, Alexa, like I said, there was a lot of stuff I was hoping to cover with you. Just ran out of time.
That's
But
okay.
I want to thank you for joining us for sure.
Of course.
Maybe in the future we'll have you back on the show. Give
come
a
back and
pagoda
talk
update.
about, maybe just like a pagoda episode, right? Like,
I did want to give you an opportunity just to remind everyone where you can go to find everything you do. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about the website, social media. Anything else you want to plug? You want to talk about?
man, not that I can think of. www.berksnostalgia.com. You'll be able to find all my socials there. And enjoy reading about our history.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great web. If you've seen any, black and white old photo from in and around Berks County, it most likely came from Alexa on BerksNostalgia.com.
Maybe.
There's a good chance that it did. She does a fantastic job, and we only touched the surface on the site and her multimedia creativity. So definitely check out BerksNostalgia.com and across the web, and hopefully we can have Alexa back on the show real soon. So thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, Justin, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, just thanks for joining. That was great.
Cool.
Absolutely. So this is episode 409 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll get back to sports, talking NFL pro football playoffs. And, we could actually be previewing a college football championship game if the team on Justin's sweatshirt has a good Thursday this week. Otherwise, we probably won't talk about the college football championship.
We will either talk a lot about it or not at all.
Yep, that's the way it works. So, all right. Thanks again to everyone for joining us for episode 409 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. We'll see you all again in 2 weeks.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your email to the Maze Sandwich Shop inbox at joemazeandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Maze and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.